G'day viewers. Well, the Australian federal election's just around the corner, and if there's someone watching who hasn't really decided who they're voting for, I'm going to give you my how to vote guide, and it's basically don't vote for the Liberal National Party coalition. Okay? Now this is not going to be an objective, neutral presentation. This is shamelessly partisan because there are a bunch of reasons that I just cannot abide by the LNP policies. I think they're mean and nasty and hurt the people who are already in the most vulnerable positions in our society. Here's the quick version. This is not an exhaustive list of reasons to not vote for the LNP, but these were the first 6 I thought of. 1. If you care about your rights in the workplace, don't vote for them. Their industrial relations policy is poison. 2. If you care about the environment, you can't possibly justify voting for them. 3. Their education policy is making everything less fair, giving more money to private schools, less to state schools, and putting university further out of the reach of people who aren't already rich. If you care about Medicare, they will destroy it. If you care about marriage equality, the Liberal National Party coalition is not going to deliver it. They are going to do everything they can to obstruct it, starting with wasting $160 million on a non-binding plebiscite. My 6th reason is they are going to put in more savage cuts to welfare and pensions while at the same time giving massive tax breaks to huge companies. Now, for those who aren't attention span challenged, a little bit more detail on those reasons. First, industrial relations, workers' rights. The LNP are all about unions are evil and bad, trying to make people forget every basic protection in your workplace was fought for and won by unions, and they will take it away from you. Start with penalty rates. The world they want is no penalty rates for anyone. If you think a nurse working the weekend shift, midnight to 8 a.m, deserves to get no additional penalty rates, then honestly, you're an awful person. Oh, and if you can't open your cafe on the weekends because of penalty rates, either learn how to operate a successful business without exploiting people who are already in shitty jobs, or shut down. Maybe you don't work hours that would involve penalty rates. Well, if the Libs and the Nats get their way, you will have no protection of any type in your job. Look forward to being in a job where you get called in for a 2-hour shift and you'll get sacked if you don't go in. Look forward to not being able to object to sexual harassment from your boss because he can sack you without warning. And if you want to know just how far they'll go, one of their proposals is for businesses to be able to pay workers in kind rather than in cash. Literally saying, hey, I dragged you in for 2 hours on a Saturday night. Good job you. This pizza ought to cover the cost of you coming in. What? You can't pay your rent in cold pizza? Sucks to be you. And if they get their way, look to find rampant exploitation of workers, particularly young people. They've got their brilliant proposal to invent an internship program that pays people, young people, from nothing to $4 an hour to then just be thrown away at the end of the internship. Now, real internships make sense in industries that are very hard to break into, so any experience is valuable. But this bullshit they're going on with is talking about extending it to internships for packing shelves in supermarkets. That's not an internship. That's exploitation. And if you're not a young person anymore and you think you're not going to get exploited, well, look forward to the continued abuse and exploitation of visitor working visas. All the various working visas were originally designed for short-term filling the gap when suitable employees couldn't be found in Australia. Now, they've been a complete rort just almost since they came in. Ask anyone who works in the industries that have been affected, construction, engineering, IT, where they just routinely get people on these short-term visitor visas rather than hire people locally who could be easily found. And it's just this remarkable coincidence that the people they get on these visas come from countries with much lower pay rates. That's just an incredible coincidence in my mind. And when you've got someone like Gina Reinhardt, who can very strongly influence Liberal Party policy, saying that, oh, Africans would work for $2 an hour, and that's something that's regarded as a good thing, you can see what direction they want to take this. Now, if you care about the environment, it should go without saying that the LNP aren't your people. Everything about them seems to be aggressively attacking the environment, from pushing coal as the preferred energy source, despite the fact that makes less and less economic sense and it has catastrophic environmental effects. You know, and they don't just push coal, they've done their unhinged attacks on renewables, making up lies about renewables, defunding the research into renewables, basically crippling Australia's future for the short-term, present-day economic gains of a few big companies that siphon off all their profits overseas anyway. If you care about the environment at all, you could not possibly vote for the LNP. If you care about equitable access to education at all, then the LNP also aren't for you. Whether it's like killing off the Gonski reforms or just siphoning more money away from state schools and pouring it into private schools that already have the most funding. It's like, so ordinary people are being screwed over and their kids are having less and less options unless the parents are able to pay through the neck for private education. And then it continues on to universities, where they keep making it harder for lower income people to go to university. They're increasing the level of fees. They've made it very clear they want to completely deregulate the fees. They've made that absolutely clear. They will occasionally lie and say, oh, maybe not, but that is obviously their preferred outcome. And the whole thing about, oh, well, you can borrow, hex, you can borrow against your fees and you only pay it back when you're earning lots of money. Yeah, except they're talking about changing the rules on that as well, where they're saying, well, what we're going to do is measure the entire household income, and when the household income's above this level, then the household has to pay. So, yeah, if you're a young person who's forced to live at home because of how fucked over the government policies are making you, then yeah, look forward to not being able to go to uni because your parents can't afford to pay, because they will be forced to pay under these proposals. Now let's talk Medicare. It became obvious that the Libs were going to destroy Medicare, and then it showed up that that was bad electoral poison. That people like Medicare because, access to health services is a good thing, and even economically, people being able to access preventative care save the economy money. Their lies about, oh, people go to the doctor 100 times a week, they've been proven to lie all the time about this. And the biggest lie was when Press Turnbull goes, we're definitely not going to privatise Medicare. That is a fucking lie. Oh, they might go to the trouble of just gutting it and bleeding it dry and making it unviable for doctors, which is fucking killing it. It's the equivalent of privatising it, but they can say, well, we didn't actually privatise it, we just changed the legislation so many times there was no option but for people to go for expensive private private health insurance. So basically, if you believe Malcolm Turnbull saying they're not going to screw over Medicare, you are one hell of a sucker, because that is definitely what they're going to do. Now we come to marriage equality. Now, if you want to be part of the 21st century and acknowledge that two adults who are in love should be able to get married if that's what they want, no matter what their gender or sexuality, then you don't want to go along with the lies being pushed by Turnbull and company, because they will do everything in their power to stop marriage equality from happening. Now, Malcolm Turnbull himself may or may not be in favour of it, but he's completely beholden to the religious fundamentalists on the extreme right of his party, and he does not have the guts to stand up to them. Now, this ridiculous idea of a plebiscite, a public popular vote that's not binding, that would waste $160 million, the government ministers and members have already said, a whole bunch of them have made it clear they won't vote for marriage equality no matter what a plebiscite says. So why the fuck would we do it? Why doesn't the government do their job and pass the laws that the majority of the public obviously want? Because they're spineless cowards. That's why. And trust me, again, if the Libs and the Nats are in charge of the wording of the plebiscite, they can easily poison that well and make it unappealing and say, see, nobody wants it, when nobody just wanted their bullshit. And the sort of hateful rhetoric they're going to stir up before, during and after any plebiscite, it's already started. I've been getting awful homophobic literature for the election, and the plebiscite's not even happening. Just look at England and the wave of racist attacks that happened after the Brexit vote. When you start pushing this rhetoric that gay people don't deserve that, gay people don't have the same rights as anyone else, all the extreme bigots here is, I'm right to go out and bash me some poofters. And the people who are pushing this message from within the LNP, they don't fucking care what happens as a result of their rhetoric. And finally, welfare spending. The government straight up this week said they were going to cut $2 billion from welfare and pensions to fund their other promises, like the $50 billion tax breaks to big companies, because that's what makes sense to them. I'll give these big companies $50 billion, which again, the majority of it will be siphoned off out of the country, won't ever pay tax on it. No. They don't put it back into the economy. They hide it. It does not trickle down. That's been disproven so many times, it's not funny. But then to really sink the boot and say you're going to cut $2 billion from welfare and pensions, the most vulnerable people in the country, and if they're admitting to $2 billion, you know they're going for more. They're going to completely destroy lives. Like, they will actually kill people with that cut. You know, to me, it doesn't seem like a huge leap. Oh, if your balance sheet is $50 billion giveaway to these companies while fucking over the poorest people for $2 billion, couldn't you maybe reduce that corporate tax break to $48 billion? Then you don't have to fuck over the people on pensions and welfare. I mean, that's just a thought. I'm not saying that anyone who does vote for the Liberal or National parties is evil. I'm just saying our values are very different. And I really want to say, this week, Turnbull let slip a fantastic bit of truth that I really hope hurts them. I'm going to read this quote to make sure I get it right. When he's being pressed on policy and things they say and what they're actually going to act in, he actually said in a press conference, what political parties say they will support and oppose at one time is not necessarily what they will ultimately do. In other words, don't believe a word he says. He's admitting that anything they say now is not necessarily going to happen in the future. For me, that should be the final nail in the coffin. But in the end, it comes down to you. I'm also going to put a few links down here for more information. If you want information about how to vote, because the Senate paper's a million miles long and some people are confused about what to do, I'm going to put a few tips on how to vote. And an interesting questionnaire that the ABC has done, that if you feel undecided, answer some questions and they will show you where your answers sit in relation to the policy of the major parties. So if you do still feel undecided, maybe that might help you. But hey, I am not even going to pretend that I'm neutral on this. It is far more likely than not that the government will be returned to power. I won't be happy. It would be almost unprecedented for them to lose this election. I think it's possible they will. I hope they will. So if I can give you one bit of advice, get out there and vote the bastards out.